Sign up for the armed forces, what you sign up for is that you will protect the United States, but also the Constitution. So all the enemies of the United States, foreign or domestic, right? So you get, the Constitution is the central governing document. I'm talking to, this one person, and he didn't know the 11th Amendment. He wanted to bitch about. So anybody that wants to repeal the Second Amendment, just ask them the 11th Amendment. So let me go down to, these statistics about how much do America, who loves democracy and spreads democracy and freedom by guns and bombs all over the entire world, how much do they actually even know they're, the only thing that's sacred in our society, the Constitution, right? If you're in the Army, if you're in the Navy, if you're in the Marines, if you go to any of the armed forces, you're going to fight against the enemies of this nation and the Constitution, to fight and defend the Constitution. So, a lot of problems with the Constitution, right? But, and I've been meaning to say a lot of this. Hopefully we'll get to all of it. So let's go down the statistics. Do Americans know jack shit about their government? No, they don't. Okay, so 28% of Americans have read the Constitution. 28%. That's less than 3 out of 10 Americans. So 7 out of 10 Americans, you walk down the street in America, 7 of those 10 people have not read the Constitution. 3 of them have. Now, the Constitution is a central governing document, which is where all the laws and all the rules of our society come from. If you have not read the Constitution, then you don't know the fucking rules of this, society, of this system. You don't even know the damn rules. So what rules are you following? Just making up your own rules as you go along? So that's the whole idea of law. Law is supposed to govern our, morality and our thinking. But if people aren't even paying attention to the damn law, all these lawyers and legislators are writing all these laws that nobody's reading. So 72% of Americans have not read the Constitution. Well, what the fuck is that about? If you become an immigrant, if you're an immigrant who wants to become an American, to, get naturalized as a citizen, you would have to pass a citizenship test. You would need to know about the 3 branches of government, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, Third Amendment. You need to know about, every bit of it. So the immigrants, we have a higher, threshold for immigrants coming into this country to know our way of, our system, at least as we wrote it down on paper. But since 72% of Americans don't even know what the hell our system is, the immigrants who come in and get naturalized as citizens actually know our system better. They actually know our system better. They know that we have freedom of speech, right to, press and peaceful assemble. So 72% of American people have not read the Constitution, but 88% of them approve of it. What the fuck? So 82%, or 88%. So that's 9 out of 10 people. So you walk by, 7 of those people haven't even read the damn document. So out of those 9 people, right, only 2 of them have read it and approved it. So they actually approved of something that they know. The other 7, they're just approving shit just because they want to fit in. They want to conform. They want to just be like everybody else. So more than a third of those surveyed, 37% can't name any of the rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. There are 5 freedoms. We got 5 freedoms under the First Amendment. The right to petition, the right to peacefully assemble, the right to speak, the right to press, and the right of religion. So those are the 5 freedoms that the First Amendment encapsulates. If you don't know that, you don't even know our first law, our first freedom, then you don't know anything. If you can't protect our first freedoms, you're not going to protect any of our freedoms. So that's essentially where all this is coming from. I am a pro-Second Amendment liberal, progressive, lefty. And that puts me on, there's people basically just, I can't stand all this fucking shit on, you don't know me, you don't know my life. So I have to look over my shoulder for criminals and for corrupt police. In every group of people, right, the citizens, police, you're going to have your bad apples. So I have to look over my shoulder for both, so if there's a situation that, happens in my home, I'm being robbed, I've also been victim of, a home invasion. I like that I live in Colorado and that I have make your day law here. And all I got is a pea shooter, right? So, I think that maybe if the rhetoric, you had Lee Camp, who essentially said that the debate of guns isn't whether or not we should or shouldn't have it, but it's the level of guns that the citizenry should be allowed to have. So that's a better actually conversation. But instead, it's like the media just wants to pit that, some are this way and then others are that way. And so this is like, it's almost like pushing for a civil war, and maybe that's what the liberals are saying. They're just, saints. They got halos over their heads, and it doesn't matter. Mao Zedong says power comes out of a barrel of a gun, but they're going to say, you know what, we're going to use our voices. And, I actually respect people who are more to the left of me, more progressive than me. The things I'm not going to, you're saying my pea shooter, I'm responsible for all of America's problems. My little pea shooter, right, is what is causing all the problems. That's bullshit. That is not the case. That is not true. We have war. We have drone strikes. We got nuclear weapons. We're killing people left and right. We've already invaded 30 countries in Africa. And I'm the only one fucking talking about this, but that's 30 new Vietnams. Vietnam started with Truman sending military advisors. So we have weapons of war all over the fucking place. But, well, we're at war. Are we? Not over here. Do you know how scary war is? War, bullets going through past your head. Everybody's being blown up. Everybody's being destroyed. It's terrifying. But over here, it's so sanitized. We don't see it. We don't have the effects. And so it's like, you could easily forget about it. Not only war, cops have killed 1,000 to 2,000 people. We've got to get the police under control. There's no checks and balances. So that probably comes from 72% of the American people not reading the Constitution. Checks and balances. We have 3 branches of government, which is arbitrary, which means it's just random. We just made it up like that just so there wouldn't be one king. So you have 3 equal independent branches. So they're all just as equally powerful. That's to stop a king. That's to stop a tyrant. That's to stop one person from ruling over everybody. We got Supreme Court, we got the Congress, and then we got the presidency. Those are the 3 branches of government to stop tyranny. That's the point. That's the genius of it, but it's also arbitrary. It's just to make it harder. If you listen to it and you're like, go to McDonald's and they say, okay, well, you've taken your order, but we've, wrote your order, your demand, now we got to get it executed, and then the judge needs to approve of it. Well, it makes it a little bit more cumbersome, right? That's why you had Baby Bush saying, God, a dictatorship would be so much easier, right? Just be dictator, I'm the boss, and everybody just do as I say. So there's some great things about the Constitution. There's about 50 or so freedoms that we are protected with. I've written it down, probably one of the greatest things I've ever written, to be honest with you. I've combined all the freedoms of America and of Colorado. And I did something similar, actually, to University of Louisville, but the student body there didn't give a shit. So anyways, so let's just, okay, more than a third of those surveyed, 37% can't name any of the rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. Only a quarter of Americans, 26%, can name all 3 branches of government. So it's genius. It's, fantastic that we do it. I do like the 3 branches of government because we're stopping tyranny. I also like the 50 freedoms that we have. So you start to talk about abridging some of my freedoms. You haven't even read the fucking Constitution. And if you don't know how the rules, that's our central governing document. All laws, all the elections, all the leadership, all the judges, all the cops, the entire system is governed by that document. So this, I love the chess analogy better and better. Chess has, a set of rules. There's castling, and then there's in passant, in passing, a pawn can. So there's some special rules, but that's like written in the rule book. But there's Bobby Fischer chess too. So if I'm sitting down with the other opposing person, and let's say we, go not the American Bobby Fischer version, but the old king and queen version. So if we're playing chess and we're on the same rules, well, that's a fair game, right? That's a nice, fair, even game. If we both agree to the Bobby Fischer American rules, that also is an even fair game, right? So the Bobby Fischer is, you take the opponents, I put the places of the king and the queen and the bishops and all the back pieces. So the opponent puts the back pieces on the other side for, the opposite person, and then you play that way. So it's not, just on the same spots. So it's more random, it's more varied, and that's more exciting. I mean, that makes you think so much more about how to. So, a lot of the beginning moves, people know that there's one little weak spot, but how many more weak? Anyways, so the reason why I mention that is because the Constitution is our rules now. If we want to play by a better set of rules, then we would rewrite the Constitution and then have, a Bobby Fischer kind of chess. That's a more exciting, more fun, and because we agreed to it. Right now, though, we're not agreeing to it. 72% of the people aren't even reading the Constitution. So perhaps they're just being Christians. They're not going around murdering and pillaging. So that means, they're good people. They won't get fucked over. But good people get fucked over. So the First Amendment, there's 5 freedoms, but over 1 out of 3, right? 37% of Americans can't even name any of them. Not a single one. Not speech, not press, not religion, peaceful assembly, not petition, but press or freedom of the speech and press. You don't even know we got freedom of speech? How the fuck, how fucking dumb are you? God damn, we have 50 freedoms. And if, not only do I like the Second Amendment, I love the First Amendment. I love the right, of the press. We're allowed to go report and then and then the thing with the press is if you can't lie, right? So if you're thrown in court, you just got to say, well, it's the truth. And that means that we got right to speech. And then another thing about freedoms and rights is that they're liberally construed. So when I say you got the right to speak, does that mean, well, you can only say a few things, but most things you can't say? No fucking A. No, it does not. What it means is most people can say whatever the fuck they want to say, with very few exceptions. That's what a right and a freedom is. The Constitution itself is a dog shit document, and hopefully I get to it. It's a dog shit document written for the elites, written for the 1%ers, the slave-owning class. It should not be sanctimonious. We should not worship this thing. That's the great thing about being an American is that you're allowed to dissent and you're allowed to question things. We don't even rewrite the Constitution, so we just keep adding laws in order to undo the old laws. This is such a dinosaur, such a Frankenstein document. So, only a quarter of Americans, 26%, can name all 3 branches of government. Oh my God! So 75% of Americans, they haven't read the 77 haven't read the Constitution, but 88% approve of it, right? Hey, do you like that cheeseburger? Well, I never tasted it, but I do think it's delicious. Yes, it is wonderful. Don't knock it until you try it, but then don't praise it until you try it either. So so only a quarter of Americans can name all 3 branches of government. That means 74% of Americans cannot name all 3 branches: legislative, judicial, executive. That's to prevent tyranny. It's arbitrary and it's made up just out of nowhere to make it more complicated, but ultimately means there's 3 centers of power. There's, the powerful judicial branch, which I think is actually probably more powerful because they control the court system and they control the jails and the cops. The cops are supposed to work for the executive branch, but the executives either don't know it or don't know how it works, and then the legislatives. So really the cops work for all 3 branches, but they're under the executive branch directly. That's how it's supposed to be, at least on paper. That's, people say, oh, communism is good on paper. I mean, we wrote this on paper. We're not good capitalists or socialists. And so what does the First Amendment say? So we'll go on. So 37% couldn't name a single right. Not any of them. There's 5 freedoms. They couldn't name one of them. But what does the First Amendment say? Nearly half of those surveyed, 48% say that the freedom of speech is a right guaranteed by the First Amendment. So, at least half of those surveyed say that, so they knew at least, that's pretty good, right? But unprompted, 37% could not name any of the First Amendment rights. None of them. So at least almost 50% knew the one fucking freedom, the first fucking freedom, the most important freedom. At least almost half. 48% of Americans knew the first freedom. And if you don't even know the first fucking freedom, you're telling me you know the other 50 freedoms? I mean, it guarantees 50 freedoms. Not a big fan of the Constitution. I'm a huge fan of the Bill of Rights. In fact, that's the whole point of the goddamn revolution. If there's any point to the revolution whatsoever, it's not a holy war. I'm on the side of Simon Girty. I'm on the side of Talgayita, Johnny Logan. If you know anything about Lord Dunmore's war, which was like the war right before the American Revolution that you're not taught about. So, when it comes to freedom of speech, okay, let's look at all these other facts. 37% could not name any First Amendment rights. Far fewer people could name the other First Amendment rights. 15% of respondents say freedom of religion. So just one of them, right? They don't even know, but they could name one. they could name the other ones. So only 15% knew freedom of religion, only 14% knew freedom of press, 10% knew the right of assembly, and 3% knew the right to petition. Come on, America. 97% of you motherfuckers don't know that we have a right to petition. So we have a right to go get signatures from people and then go give it to the government officials and say, look, 1,000 of us are fucking sick of this shit. We're allowed to do that. That's a freedom guaranteed under the First Amendment. So when people act like, oh my God, I can't believe that person asked me. Fuck you. You're not a good American. You know, listen to the petition. If you disagree with it, fine. But if you're just going to be like, I never signed anything. Oh my God. You could ask them what, anyway. So 15% only know religion, 14% only know the press, 10% only know the right of assembly, and 3% know the right to petition the government. And for freedom of speech, 48%. So maybe I should be more happy about that. That's almost half of you guys. Almost half of Americans know that we have the right to freedom of speech. Almost half of us. So maybe let's get a majority on board. I don't know if anybody believes that maybe the majority should be in control, but let's get the majority on board with this democracy thing, right? First, before we just run with it. Well, 10% people voted. Okay, well then let's just go with it. More facts, okay? So the American people know the Larry, Curly, and Moe. So they don't know the three branches of government. So let's see, 48% for freedom of speech, 72% of them haven't read the Constitution. So 72% not read the Constitution. More than a third of those surveyed, 37%, can't name any of their rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. None of them. None of them. And only a quarter, I think the branches of government actually is probably just as important. So the 26%, so 74%, nearly 3 out of all 4 Americans, right? You walk past 10 people, 7 to 8 people, don't know shit about the 3 branches. What the hell? Executive, judicial, executive? What the hell you mean by executive and legislative, judicial? That sound like commie talk. Why don't you get the hell on out of here, boy? That's, you must not be from around here. 3 branches of government? Nah, I ain't never heard that. So, okay. So 3 branches of government, only 26% know. So that means 74%, a whopping 74% of Americans don't know shit about the 3 branches, just like 72%, I guess if you haven't read the document, but 72% of people haven't read the document. And then, 37% couldn't name any of the first freedoms. Only for freedom of speech, just 48%, not even 50% knew the freedom of speech. You're going to take away the Second Amendment? Are you going to take away my right to petition too? Only 3% of you assholes even know about it. And then let's talk about the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment is just so fucking stupid. It's so ridiculous. We have a federalist government, but because the powerful people in charge of the states didn't want one state to sue another state, we run our shit around. Some had slaves, right? So you didn't want the government to be able to use the federal government. This is back in the 1800s. But the 11th Amendment was the first amendment passed after the Bill of Rights, and it says that you cannot use the federal government to sue the other states. So there's a big question about gun manufacturers. So should we be able to sue them for being, liable for the crimes? So if you were actually astute and you knew the Constitution, you knew the rules to the game to begin with, I'd be more apt to listen to you, because the 11th Amendment. This is whatever. We'll get to. You could use the gun control crowd, and there's many uses of this. But essentially, we're not allowed to sue the other 40 states, other 49 states. We can't use the federal government if we are injured by Hawaii, by Oregon or Montana or Massachusetts or Florida. If somehow Florida injures me here sitting in Colorado, I'm not allowed to sue them using the federal court because of the 11th Amendment. You just had $5 million lawsuit about this prisoner who got his ass kicked in one of the prisons in Colorado, but apparently he's not going to see any of those millions of dollars because of the 11th Amendment. So you could sue the gun manufacturers of another state if you knew about the 11th Amendment and you repealed the 11th Amendment. But you're not talking about repealing the 11th Amendment because you don't know about the 11th Amendment to even talk about repealing it. Only 3% of Americans know about the right to petition. So if you only know, 3% only knows, that's the first 5 freedoms. So if the first 5 freedoms, only 3%, you're not going to know. I said there's 50 freedoms. You're not going to know the rest of the freedoms.